In the early part of the 20th century, we had a lot of different style things going on, not only in music but in the visual arts, that we have given names that end with ism. If you pick up any art textbook and you get to that part of the thing, you'll see like 15 or 20 different isms stuck in there. In music, we really only talk about a couple of them. We've already talked about Impressionism. Now let's look at Expressionism. Impressionism, French. Who were the big enemies of the French? The Germans. So if the French were doing something, the Germans were going to do something different. And that's what Expressionism is. So what the basic underlying construct for Expressionism is psychological. Remember, this is a period of time where we were coming through Freud and all those early psychologists thinking about what makes people do the things that they do, why do people behave the way they do, and a lot of it has to do with sort of the dark side of the human psyche. So the Expressionists really focused on that dark side. So in music, we don't hear a lot of expressionist music that is just instrumental. The really good examples for expressionist style for music are in opera, because that's a really great way to be able to tell the story of these people's behavior. It's harder to do in some other way, so opera is sort of our main route towards expressionist style. So we're looking at dark sides of people's behavior, very intense kinds of music. We're in the 20th century now, so we can do lots of different kinds of sounds. One of the things that composers tried to do was to get away from the idea of being in any sense of key at all. We talked a little bit about atonal music earlier. This is where we hear a lot of it. If we're trying to really create tension and a sense of perhaps the lostness of a person, psychically speaking, atonal music is a good way to do that. You don't get a sense of where we're going. The music doesn't have a focus. We don't know what key we're in. Where are we headed? We just don't know. That's a really good musical underpinning for a story where we have a character who doesn't really know where they're going or why they're going where they're going. So the music itself can build on that tension of our personal strife that this character is having. So atonal music, we have a couple of major composers who focus on that. Arnold Schoenberg is one, and the other is Alban Berg. And we're going to look at a work by Berg as a good example of that kind of approach. But Berg also did some very interesting things in the work that we're going to look at that tie back to some really old kinds of things. One of the things that he's done in this work is to use structures or at least terminology of things that we've heard before. The work that we're looking at is an opera called Wozzeck. Wozzeck is the main character's name. And it's a 3-act opera. So Berg, in sort of an homage to previous periods and styles, names his 3 acts exposition, development, catastrophe. So he sort of leads us into thinking he's doing a sonata cycle sort of thing there, but then catastrophe. So we know that something bad is going to happen at the end. But then he takes each act, and each act has 5 scenes. So it's all balanced, so that's very classical style there, right? We've got 3 very balanced sort of acts. But each act is a set of variations. So it's a sort of theme and variation thing. One act is variations on a rhythm or a note. So he's taking a very traditional kind of approach, putting it into an entirely new context, getting rid of a sense of tonality, so we've lost our sort of feel for that. And then the final thing that he adds to that that's new and that really connects to our ideas about what people do in modern style music is that he has the singers sing in different kinds of ways. So if you looked at the music for this, the written out music for this, you would see that the pitches are not specifically defined. So we've got the rhythm that the words are supposed to follow, and maybe some general sort of ups and downs of the sounds, but they're not even marked with real notes. They're like little X's or some kind of interesting symbol that's different. And what the composer wanted the singer to do here was to create this new and sort of eerie sort of sound where the pitches aren't specific. You can't really get a sense, again, of what key we're going toward here. And even sometimes it may not even be particularly sung. It may be closer to spoken word. The term for that is Sprechstimme. Sprechstimme, good German set of consonants there for you. And we will see that in the excerpts that we're going to watch. So in the story of Wozzeck is a soldier who has been the subject of some sort of secret testing. There's another character, a doctor in there, who has taken Wozzeck as a subject and is treating him in some ways to affect his behavior. So it's like a really early psychological testing setup. And Wozzeck doesn't really know that this is happening to him. Wozzeck has a girlfriend, Marie, and they have a child. But there's this other character named the drum major. He doesn't have a name. He has a title. He's drum major, who also wants Marie. So we have all this sort of conflict over the woman. We have a character who has been psychologically manipulated in the first place. Obviously, this is our setup for catastrophe. So what happens is that eventually Wozzeck actually kills Marie. Not unusual people get killed in the opera, right? But what happens next is his reaction to that. Why did he do that? And then he's trying to get back the knife that he stabbed her with, and then he actually drowns himself. So things don't go well. That's just the catastrophe part of it. All that happens in the last act. I've given you a couple of scenes to watch from this. One is a scene where he kills Marie. So you see just the two of them. It's a very stark kind of approach, and that's very typical of Expressionist opera. Generally, the scenery is sort of dark to set that mood that we're in a dark part in this person's mind. And you can see that their relationship is sort of changing as the scene goes along, as he's kind of devolving into the evil part that's going to kill her eventually. There's another scene in between this and the one that you're going to watch, and you can go look at it if you like. But then the next scene that I want you to watch is the scene where he's now feeling all this remorse about having killed her. He's worried that they will find out that he did it. He needs to find the weapon and get rid of it, and then his own death at the end of that. The final scene of the opera, which I've not given you to watch, but you can certainly find it yourself, is not what you might expect. So we've had this murder. We've now got basically a suicide. The final scene is their child. So we had the parent. He has no parents now. We have an orphan at the end. So that's sort of the ultimate tragedy of the thing, is that we have this orphan. And the final scene is this orphan. He doesn't know yet that his parents are dead. Other people in the scene do. And he is basically playing Ring Around the Rosie with his friends, like on a little hobby horse. They're just playing games, and you're just left with this child who has no parents, doesn't know it. He thinks everything's happened. He's just playing his childhood game. So it's a very powerful kind of ending to what has already been an extremely powerful opera. So as you watch it, listen for some of that Sprechstimme, where the singing is not quite what it's not what you expect from singing. Think about the sense of not being in a key. Listen to see if you can figure out where something's going, and see if he actually takes you where you thought it was, where that line was leading. Probably it won't. And you might also think about the psychological aspects of it, not just the music. How are these characters interacting? How do we get to this catastrophe? And then think about how the music really underpins that and gives us that whole expressionist idea.